Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen across our beautiful country of Canada, our friends around the world, in the known and unknown universe. Welcome back to your favorite Angry Canadian on the 25th day of February 2024. 2024, wow. Have you noticed how much more daylight we have? Well, we still have the same amount of daylight, but it doesn't get dark as early. I mean, shit, in Canada, when you're in the middle of winter or in the beginning, December, January, it's dark by, 4:30, 5 o'clock. Now we got a lot more daylight. Oh, it makes me feel good, especially it starts, getting sunny and warming up. But just something to look forward to. What I haven't been looking forward to, and boy, I tell you, I've had a few days when I was like a firecracker with a fuse lit on it, because I kept making what I considered awesome videos. And they were about subjects that, it's really difficult to talk about because of censorship. Say like that old medical thing that happened a few years ago, and all the experts and politicians were saying, oh shit, man, there's nothing to worry about. It's as safe as your mother's, chicken soup.
I have heard, and you have heard, and we have all heard directly from friends, loved ones, Canadians in general, how eager everyone is to get through this, get back to normal, get to a better summer, end this pandemic once and for all. Everyone wants that, and we know the way to do that is to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. I can reinforce once again that every single vaccine available in Canada has been approved by Health Canada as being both safe and effective. On a personal level, I am extremely pleased that I got the Astrazeneca vaccine a number of weeks ago.
Can you talk about what plans will be in place to convince Canadians that taking the vaccine protects us all?
First of all, the work that Health Canada is doing to ensure that this vaccine is every vaccine that is approved is safe for Canadians is uncompromising. There are no corners cut. There are measures put in place to ensure that any vaccine we distribute to Canadians will be safe for Canadians. Canadians can have confidence in our medical professionals, in our scientists, in our researchers who are doing everything they can to keep Canadians safe, both from this pandemic and from other challenges as we move forward. I want to end today by speaking directly to kids once again. And I know almost half of kids across this country have gotten their vaccine from ages 5 to 12. We need to get more. So please ask your parents if you can get vaccinated. Getting vaccinated protects yourself, protects your family, protects your grandparents, protects vulnerable people, but it also supports our frontline workers who are working incredibly hard, our nurses and doctors and people in hospitals who are dealing with a rise in cases.
All of Canada's vaccines are highly effective in every combination that we have. And I presented data last week that showed that here in BC, and we have similar data from other provinces in British across the country. For those who have taken Astrazeneca, who've taken the vaccine that was offered to you at the first opportunity, you did the right thing. We are now actively working with Health Canada and will continue to work with the Public Health Agency of Canada to make sure that Canada has a single internationally recognized vaccine passport that includes the recognition of these combinations. And I can tell you, my colleagues at the Public Health Agency and Dr. Tam have been meeting with our counterparts in other countries.
So, of course, I'm making these videos right now because I'm very pissed off at our government, even before I knew my son had 4 blood clots in 2023, 1 in each leg and 2 in his lungs. I already never trusted our government on any of the information they came out with. I mean, think about it. You had vaccine come around in record amount of time, and it was totally safe. Nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. As a matter of fact, it's so good that the government is gonna insist that you get vaccinated, and if you don't, you're gonna lose your job. I mean, it happened to cops, firemen, nurses, doctors, whoever. The government forced you to do it. They should be up on criminal charges in an open public court. I mean, when Trudeau's out there or Bonnie Henry saying how safe and effective it is, and if you get jabbed, no one else will be impacted, where did they get that information from?
Clarissa Nichols was studying languages at Cambridge University and had her whole life ahead of her. Living in France as part of her studies, she embarked on a hiking trip on the Maybank holiday this year.
Nothing different all that day, lots of walking. They swam in the lake in a really sort of private area, a lovely little beach that they'd found. And they then had a picnic lunch by the lake, and then they took this path up the hill, which was quite steep. And I know that there was a lot of huffing and puffing, but her friend says how Clarissa was right ahead, and it was very difficult for her to keep up because Clarissa was always marching on ahead and nothing could really stop her. And all of a sudden, Clarissa put out her hands, I gather, and in front of her, as if to stop her from falling forwards, and said, "Oh no," and obviously had something that she must have felt, presumably in her heart, and she fell back into her friend's arms.
By chance, an American medic was hiking nearby.
The American came down and gave her CPR and worked on her for half an hour, but she's told us that even the first point of seeing Clarissa, she could tell there was nothing there. And I've asked the police, who have spent a lot of time talking to us about it and giving us a lot of support, what would have happened if that had happened right outside the hospital. And nothing could have helped her even then, because it's such a big explosion that happens in the heart.
Professor Mary Shepherd is a pathologist specialising in the kind of heart conditions that cause sudden cardiac death in the young. She examined Clarissa's heart after she died and discovered, unknown to her, she had a fatal condition called arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy.
How long have we known about that particular abnormality?
Only really on a large scale level since the 2000s, since the beginning of this century. When I was a medical student, it was utterly unknown.
We've seen figures that maybe there are 12 deaths of young people a week. How common do you think this kind of sudden cardiac death in the young is?
I would say of young people under the age of 35, if I was to say how many die suddenly, I'd say 20 per week would be my estimate.
So potentially almost twice as many as currently are being estimated?
Yes, that would be my estimate from talking to people and families throughout the country who say, well, the case was never referred to you or never referred for an expert cardiac opinion.
You know, there was a time when people were called conspiracy theorists who didn't want to run to the first place to get jabbed. I mean, I got videos taken in Kelowna where in the parking lot they had big tents set up and you could just drive through to get jabbed. They were offering beer and tickets and lottery and you name it. Money, cash to get jabbed. You know, where did they come up with this? And again, if you didn't go by it, if you questioned it, well, you'd be censored. You could lose your channel. It's ridiculous.
Back on his feet after a harrowing ordeal.
All I did was go and take a vaccine.
Now Chris Nemeth is fighting for justice.
I couldn't walk, I couldn't work.
The once healthy 49-year-old became wheelchair-bound after developing a chronic neurological disorder called CIDP. He says the symptoms began 2 weeks after having his first Astrazeneca vaccination in 2021. They included headaches, tingling fingers, facial palsy and stolen mobility.
I was paralysed completely from the waist down.
Mr Nemeth is still unwell and claiming millions of dollars in compensation under the federal government's COVID-19 vaccine claim scheme. He's one of more than 3,000 unlucky Australians maintaining COVID vaccines made them ill.
We've just had a settlement of $2.2 million for a very deserving applicant.
Tanya Nielsen is helping 100 injured Australians claim for rare but recognised vaccine side effects, like heart issues from the Pfizer vaccine and Guillain-Barré syndrome from Astrazeneca.
Over 12 months in which to get an outcome, and these are applicants who might not be able to work, so they don't have an income.
So far, the claim scheme has paid 147 people $7.7 million, with more than 2,000 applications in progress. Chris Nemeth wants interim payments and a simpler system. The scheme closes early next year. Jackie Quist, 7 News.
Sue every one of the mother truckers, take away everything they have. I don't care if it's their house, their car, their bank accounts, because look at what these bozos did pushing an untested product on population. Not just pushing it. It wasn't just about, well, you should. If you don't do it, you're going to lose your fucking job. And you lose your job, you're going to lose your house, you could lose your truck. They were taking trucks away from the truckers, for Christ's sakes, but you could lose your house. Ultimately, if you're not working, you could lose your family. You go down the list at what these bastards and biatches have done to their own country, to their own citizens. You damn right I'm friggin' pissed off. And I also realize that if we don't stand up now, then we might as well shove our heads up our ass and pretend everything is freaking hunky-dory. And next time they want to do something like this, well, we should just all line up. You know, I've seen, I think it's in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, when all the inmates have to line up and take their pills at night. I mean, what, 1984? Is that where we're heading? That whatever is thrust upon you, you're going to have to do it without question? Or what? What is happening?
Well, it's official. YouTube has just now banned anything related to health that doesn't align with the general medical consensus. So if any information related to health doesn't agree with the World Health Organization, they won't necessarily always take down the video, but they're going to change the algorithms. So they're going to replace those videos that were popular, that had lots of likes and lots of engagement, with medical information. This new partnership with YouTube is supposed to protect you against misinformation and promote high quality health information.
Welcome back. Now, Dr. John Campbell, who's also a familiar face on this show, says the evidence is physical. It exists. You can see it, feel it, put it under a microscope. It's real. He's referring to blood clots being found by coroners, morticians, and those who look after the bodies of the dead. Dr. John Campbell joins me now. Hello, John. Thank you for making time.
Always a pleasure, Neil. Thank you.
What are we looking at? What are we seeing? And I think we have footage and imagery to give people a glimpse.
It really is like something out of a low-grade novel, Neil, isn't it? You've got this new, or apparently completely new pathology being found in dead bodies around the world. And we know that these have been found, these strange, mysterious, long, rubbery white clots have been found in bodies in the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Now, I've actually heard about these some time ago, but I didn't realize how abundant they were. And then I was interviewing Major Tom Haviland, who's a data analyst in the States. And he's actually reached out to 269 embalmers with an average of 15 years experience each, embalming about 100 bodies a year on average per person. And in the year 2023, 73% of these embalmers have observed these strange white, stringy, rubbery clots. Really quite incredible. And if you take into account the embalmers that didn't see any, it was still in 20% of the dead bodies. And it seems to be pretty similar in the United States and in the United Kingdom. And we really don't know what these are. These are a new pathology. And as you said in the introduction, this is real. It's not a bad story. These rubbery clots that can be an inch long or can be up to 30 inches long are there and have been pulled out of the arterial systems and the venous systems of dead bodies. And there's some anecdotal reports of them being pulled out of living bodies by surgeons as well. But we know for sure in about 20% of dead bodies. And these didn't occur prior to 2020. So previously they'd never heard of. In 2020, some people saw very small numbers, but then lots in 2021, 2022, 2023.
As someone immersed in the medical world, the medical fraternity, do you get a sense that anyone anywhere is putting serious consideration into all of the possible explanations for where something new has appeared in the last handful of years?
Not really. I don't really get that impression, Neil. And in fact, the way that postmortems are done, well, firstly, there's fewer postmortems done in the United Kingdom at the moment, and I believe in the United States. But the way they're done, they take out blocks of organs and don't really analyse the vascular system in that much detail. Well, welcome to today's talk. It's Sunday, the 4th of February 2024. Now, in my country, we have something called Prime Minister's Question Time, where members of Parliament can ask the Prime Minister questions. Now, this was the British Prime Minister last Wednesday, the 31st of January, not 2021, but 2024, just a few days ago. Prime Minister.
Let me be unequivocal from this dispatch box that COVID vaccines are safe. Mr. Speaker.
Hi, Rishi Sunak. I've got so much to say, but such little time. My name is John Watt, and I'm one of the COVID vaccine injured in this country. I want you to look into my eyes, Rishi Sunak, and I want you to look at the pain, the trauma, and the regret I have in my eyes. We have been left with no help at all. Not only am I in here that's vaccine injured, there's another man over there whose life's been ruined by that COVID-19 vaccine. I know people who have lost legs, amputations. I know people with heart conditions like myself, Rishi Sunak. Why have I had to set up a support group in Scotland to look after the people that have been affected by that COVID-19 vaccine? Why are the people who are in charge, who told us all to do the right thing, have left us all to rot and left me and the thousands and the tens of thousands in this country to rot? Rishi Sunak, look me in the eye. When are you going to start to do the right thing? The vaccine damage payment scheme is not fit for purpose. In Scotland right now, according to the yellow card system, there are over 30,000 people that have had an adverse reaction to that vaccine and 200 deaths.
John, thank you very much indeed for your question.
It's time for you to start doing the right thing, Mr. Rishi Sunak and the rest.
Let me be unequivocal from this dispatch box that COVID vaccines are safe. Mr. Speaker.
You've made a really strong point, John. Prime Minister.
Yeah, John, well, I'm very sorry to hear about your personal circumstances, and you said someone over here also seems to have suffered by a similar thing. Now, obviously, I don't know about the individual situation that you're in.
We're silenced.
Well,
on social media and everything. Okay. We are silenced. We are the most silenced people in this country.
Silence in the press because my story in the press had to go to the government for comment, and they made them take all the stuff out.
Forgive me both.
I know, I'm happy. No one is saying. No one's saying
yeah, okay.
I've lost my house, my wife, and a successful career.
And sir, you raised some very valid points, I'm sure. What I've got to say is, though, we haven't got you on microphone, and as you know, we've got to get through this. I'm sure we can raise your points with the Prime Minister at a later date. But in the meantime, Prime Minister, if you could cover the issue.
I'm very happy to. So look, there is a vaccine compensation scheme that's in place, as you alluded to in the NHS. Obviously, everyone individually will work through their cases. It's difficult for me to comment on anyone's individual case. I'm sure you'll appreciate that. I'm very happy to go and look at the cases, and I'm sure you'll get them to the team here. I mean, I'm very saddened and shocked to hear that you've been silenced by anybody. That is surprising to me, so please do get your details.
All right, this news from Ottawa. The Prime Minister has just tweeted that he has tested positive for COVID-19. He said,
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just tweeting out that he has tested positive for COVID-19. He says he feels okay and that he'll be following public health guidelines. Now, we recall Trudeau just returned from the Summit of the Americas in California on the weekend. This would be the second time the Prime Minister has tested positive. Let's bring in our senior political correspondent for CTV News Channel, Michael Couture, to walk us through this. So unfortunately, the PM coming back from the U.S. Now having to isolate after a second COVID testing positive once again for COVID-19.
So, Health Canada issues new guidelines for the use of Astrazeneca, which is really friggin' brilliant after, it's been in use for a while. And why are we recommending new guidelines? Well, because people are friggin' dying. Holy shit, we didn't expect that, did we? Oh no, Trudeau stood there and said, and he got the Astrazeneca. Man, I can only hope, I can only wish, I can only dream that Trudeau has, a little mishap with something he forced onto Canadians.
Well, welcome to today's talk, Friday the 25th of November. Now, for the first time in the United States, we've got data that says there's been more COVID deaths in people that are vaccinated versus people that are unvaccinated. And we want to look at that in a little bit of detail in a minute and put some context in that. And also we want to look at the bivalent vaccine boosters that are being given in the States. And we're going to be looking at information from VSafe, which shows that 54.8% of vaccine recipients of the bivalent boosters had systemic side effects, most of which weren't serious in the time frame they were looking at. Now, that's about the only way I can summarize this. It is a bit complicated. And of course, YouTube rules and my own personal standards insist that we will be looking at data from official sources and other reputable sources of data. So we're not going against any guidelines from the United States government. This is quite interesting. 58% of coronavirus deaths in August were people who were vaccinated or boosted. And that is people who'd had a primary course of vaccines, at least a primary course of vaccines. So what it looks like is happening here is we're getting waning of the protective effects of the vaccines. It's now waning. And of course, this combined with the systemic side effects that we're going to look at from the booster doses needs to be taken into account as we consider the risk-benefit analysis.
We'll start with Dr. Sharma from Health Canada. Dr. Sharma, à vous la parole.
Thank you. Merci. Bonjour. Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As part of Health Canada's continuing commitment to openness and transparency, the department is updating Canadians on new actions related to the Astrazeneca vaccine. Health Canada has previously communicated on its ongoing assessment of very rare adverse events reported in Europe of blood clots with low platelets occurring after immunization with the AstraZeneca vaccine. The product information was recently updated to reflect this information. To date, no cases of these events have been reported in Canada. However, through our ongoing international collaboration, Health Canada has become aware that additional cases of these events have been reported in Europe. In light of this evolving information, Health Canada will be issuing additional terms and conditions on the authorizations of the AstraZeneca and Verity Pharmaceuticals Serum Institute of India vaccine. These will include a requirement that the manufacturers conduct a detailed assessment of the benefits and risks of the vaccine by age and sex in the Canadian context. This information will support the ongoing evaluation of these rare blood clotting events and allow Health Canada to determine if there are specific groups of people who may be at higher risk.
Well, a warm welcome to this talk, and I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Richard Hirschman from Alabama. Now, Richard was one of the first embalmers in the world to notice these white blood clots and to start photographing them and taking notice of them, a new pathology. Richard, thank you very much for coming on the video.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here.
Now, you're actually a professional embalmer, Richard. How many bodies a year will you embalm?
Well, I'm a trade embalmer, so that varies depending on, how busy the funeral home is and if they want to call me or not. But I probably embalm at least 300 plus bodies a year. Sometimes I've embalmed up to 650 in a year.
And how long have you been embalming for?
I started the profession back in 2001. I recall being in the funeral home as an apprentice when 9/11 happened. So it's been a long time. Now, I finished mortuary school in 2004 and became duly licensed. We have to do an apprenticeship first before we can take our national board exams.
Now, you first saw these clots early 2021. March or April time 2021. Have you ever seen anything like these white clots before in your entire 23-year career?
No, John, I haven't. And I remember the earlier times of when I first saw it. I was shocked, and I just, kind of overlooked it as a strange anomaly. But when I started seeing it more and more often as the year went along, I started asking other embalmers and professionals that I work around and with, had they ever seen it? Some of these people had up to, 30, 40, 50 years of experience, and none of them had witnessed these types of clots either.
So it's interesting, Richard. So far, I've spoken to 3 medical professors, about half a dozen doctors, and at least 1 pathologist, and none of them have seen anything like this before. They simply hadn't seen it. This seems to be a completely new pathology that's being identified.
To end the pandemic, but some countries in Europe are putting a pause on the Astrazeneca shot. As you know, that vaccine, it is one of the 4 being used right here in Canada, and we're waiting to hear some news on that vaccine from the country's top advisory panel. CBC's Natasha Fatah is tracking this story live from Toronto. What are you hearing, Natasha?
That's right, Suhanna. What's happening in Europe is in the background of this very important decision that we might get some update on this week. We know that the National Advisory Committee on Immunizations, this federal body, did meet yesterday, and there is a possibility that they might reverse their decision on AstraZeneca as it relates to individuals who are 65 years of age or older. Now, previously, their recommendation had been that these individuals should not necessarily get AstraZeneca. They would have recommended that they get the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine instead. But now there's a possibility that they might have changed their mind on this. Now, we don't have any official confirmation on that point as of yet, and we're waiting to find out and putting in calls on that front.
I got so many other videos, and they're not from wackos, on the Internet of Things, spreading mis and disinformation. You know who spread the fucking mis and disinformation? Our very own government, while it was hurting, even killing its own citizens. But for Trudeau killing Canadians, hey, that's just a rite of time, a rite of passage. I mean, shit, if that doesn't get you, well, we got a million ways that you can go, MAID? Medically induced, medically assisted, whatever. 10,000 is the last I heard of how many Canadians, and they want to pass the law, which I guess in the next couple of years, that if you're sad, if you're unhappy, If you just, whatever reason you have, you just go bye-bye. I mean, shit, people are not living as long as they used to. People are being killed by their governments. Is this our Canada? How much are we going to tolerate?
There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Yeah.